The Agricultural Writers of South Africa presents Agriculturist of the Year. Candidates in the category Agriculturist of the Year are Free State, Jane McPherson; Gauteng, Dr. John Purchase; KwaZulu-Natal, Dr. Rikus Kloppers; Limpopo, Professor Peter Taylor; Northwest, Johan Jordaan; Northern Cape, Henning; and Western Cape, André Agenbag. It's what you do with that land to make it productive that is important. Jane McPherson. Jane McPherson is known countrywide for the progressive work by Grain SA's Farmer Development Programme done under her leadership. With an annual budget of more than 16 million rand, the programme serves more than 3,600 study group members and 120 more established farmers. Study group members cultivate almost 50,000 hectares of land, and the more established farmers sow more than 12,000 hectares annually. About half of them produce more than 250 tons of maize per year, 18 more than 500 tons, and 12 members are in the top club, producing more than 1,000 tons. Jane, a native of the Eastern Free State who grew up on her father's wheat farm, started the program 15 years ago, the past 10 years under the auspices of Grain SA. As a child, she learned to know and understand the local Basotho community and speaks fluent Sotho. Jane is involved in land reform and has committed herself to move the focus from land ownership to enhanced land use. She and her colleagues improve farmers' production practices to, as she puts it, we can have more today than what we had yesterday. The Ambassador and Gentleman of Organised Agriculture, Dr. John Purchase. Many South African agriculturalists can boast that they are leaders when it comes to either genetics or economics or policy creation. Only a few have distinguished themselves in all of these areas, like Dr. John Purchase. He has not only given a voice to primary agriculture, but also gave one to agricultural businesses. He has constantly adapted to the changing agricultural landscape locally and internationally. His door is always open to journalists, one of the most accessible sources to any journalist. As previous research manager of the Crop Science Division at the Small Grain Institute of the Agricultural Research Council, he was responsible for various research projects functioning under the Seed Maintenance, Seed Laboratory, Small Grain Cultivar Evaluation, and Crop Physiology Agronomy programs. As Chief Executive Officer of the Agricultural Business Chamber, or AgBiz, he directs and manages the common interests of the members in the broader agro-food industry. This entails negotiations and interactions on critical agricultural and food policy and legislative issues with international businessmen, politicians, and government officials. Offering solutions to many a grain farmer's production problems, Dr. Rikus Kloppers. Dr. Rikus Kloppers is one of South Africa's leading agricultural plant pathologists and has offered explanations and solutions to many a grain farmer's production problems. Rikus is responsible for managing the Technical Service Support Group in the Seed Research Department at PANA. In 2004, Rikus received the Applied Plant Pathology Award for his outstanding contribution towards applied plant pathology. He has developed a risk management system for plant diseases. He gives technical talks on issues ranging from diseases, risk management to biotechnology at farmer and field days across the grain production areas in the country. He's a member of the South African Society for Plant Pathology, the Plant Breeding Society of South Africa, the American Phytopathological Society, the American Seed Trading Association, and the South African Seed Organization. He acts as an external examiner for various universities. In 1997, Rikus was a member of the 54th Marion Island Expedition, where he did research on plant diseases on subantarctic flora. Without bats, agricultural production would crash and forests would not regenerate. Professor Peter Taylor. It's not every day that new mammal species are described to science, so the announcement of 4 new species of African horseshoe bats made world headlines. The investigation was led by bat expert, the University of Venda's Professor Peter Taylor, and a team of researchers from the universities of Stellenbosch, Swaziland, KwaZulu-Natal, and Cambridge in the UK. Bats are misunderstood and unfairly persecuted by the public due to a variety of unfounded myths, says Taylor. In many European and African cultures, bats are unfairly associated with evil, witchcraft, and vampires. On the contrary, bats are harmless and provide many positive and essential ecosystem services, such as pollination and seed dispersal, which allows regeneration of cleared forests and pest control of agricultural insect pests. The discovery of 4 new species of horseshoe bats in southern Africa underlines the important contribution of bats to mammalian diversity. 1/4 of all mammal species are bats, and South Africa now boasts over 60 species of bats. Without these bats, agricultural production would crash and forests would not regenerate, says Taylor. One of the new species, Smithers horseshoe bat, is restricted mostly to the Soutpansberg Mountains, emphasizing the astonishing and unique biodiversity of this area, which forms the core of the newly proclaimed UNESCO Vembi Biosphere Reserve. The best feedback is from clients. Johan Jordaan. Johan started his career as the general farm manager at Amatis. He was responsible for the production of potatoes, apples, mixed sowing, and dairy farming. He also had a stint as production manager at Wilde Klaver, where he was responsible for the production of butternuts, watermelon, gem squash, and pumpkin, all under irrigation. His career as soil scientist started at TerraTech in 2008, and in that year alone, he was responsible for the soil classification of about 18,000 hectares. He then took on the responsibility for data processing, interpretation, and model development. The main objective of model development is to process data into visual maps that illustrate the physical and chemical statuses of the soil. Furthermore, he was responsible for putting forward recommendations about chemical adjustments to farmers and farming businesses. This assists producers to utilize their resources to their full optimized potential. In March 2010, Johan was appointed as Senior Soil Scientist, adding the management and quality control of the Soil Science Division of TerraTech to his portfolio. To date, Johan and his team at TerraTech have classified, analyzed, and made recommendations on more than 300,000 hectares of agricultural land for dry land and irrigational systems. A new cultivar under his belt, Henning Burger. For the past 7 years, Henning Burger is Chief Viticulturist at Orange River Wineries in the Northern Cape, South Africa's largest wine cooperative. He established an extensive viticulture division which serves an area spanning approximately 400 kilometers along the Orange River. Winery members grow up to 140,000 tons of grapes per year, about 1/10 of South Africa's total vineyard hectares. He also conducted experiments with Distel, which proved that the yield of wine grapes need not to be restricted for the sake of better quality, adding significant value for farmers. Henning also developed a handy computer model with which farmers can calculate establishment costs and manage normal operating cost. It is now generally used in negotiations for farmers' financing costs. Another valuable contribution was his experiments with a previously unregistered cultivar, Villard Blanc. Thanks to the positive results, Henning registered this cultivar, which is now being established at an average of 70 hectares per year. The numerous awards and medals Orange River Wines has won range from the South African Young Wine Show to overseas awards and are a direct testimonial of Henning's input. We had to convince farmers that minimum and no tillage had many benefits. André Agenbag. Professor André has been rendering a very important contribution to research on tillage and fertilizer requirements of wheat and canola for almost 40 years. The results of his pioneering research are widely communicated at farmers' days, symposia, study group meetings, and through articles in the media. His research has contributed to the initial establishment of minimum or no tillage systems for the cultivation of cereals and other annual crops in the Western Cape. A mathematical prediction model developed from the results of this research are currently being refined and tested under field conditions. He has been closely involved with canola research for the past decade, since there was very little local information available about this new but potentially very important crop for the Western Cape. André is a fellow of the South African Society of Crop Production and was SA Grain Scientist of the Year for 2011. Since 1995, he is Professor in the Department of Agronomy at the University of Stellenbosch.